want some sauce?
Scene 1, Apple, take 1.
Okay, so we have, I shouldn't say we, I have, my wife and I have a issue with her BMW. And what I've done is I've taken off the plastic cover that basically exposes all of this stuff here. And the problem is the number 6 cylinder, the number 6 fuel injector doesn't want to work. The car is running very rough. That's the first, running very rough. Hardly has any acceleration, wants to stall. Not only that, but when I ended up hooking up my code reader, my computer to the car, it basically told me that the number 6 cylinder is like just way too lean. It's just, you know, it's just not working. So what I went ahead and I did first is I've taken the cap of this thing off here, and let me remove these. Okay, what we end up having right here, which I don't know if you're going to be able to see it. Let me get the camera closer. And right here is our fuel rail, and this holds the fuel injectors in place. Okay, and we should be able to pop these guys out of the way to give ourselves a little bit more room. Now, in order to remove this fuel rail and to get access to these fuel injectors, we're going to have to remove a few things. Okay, one that we want to do is we're going to remove the electric. Okay, so we're going to pop this piece off here. There's another one that goes over here. Okay, and if I can get this off. Okay, so now that that's been removed, these wires, these connectors are hooked up to the fuel injectors with a snap clip. Okay, and it's really hard to get to these guys. So what you can do is get close to the fuel injector and just kind of give it a little bit of a nice little pry. Okay, and it should release all of these guys like that. Okay, you're going to see that there's one back here that basically isn't playing nice with the rest of them. Okay, and there's a reason for that. It's because this one right here had been replaced. So now that we have done that, if we want to remove the fuel injectors, we're going to end up seeing that we have a bolt here, a bolt here, a bolt here, and a bolt here. After we remove the bolts from here and here and here and here, we've got some clips that are hooked onto the fuel injectors right here. Okay, and that's what attaches these guys to the fuel rail. Okay, but the fuel rail, after we remove this, should just pop right up. Most of the stuff that we're going to be taking apart is going to be right around 10 millimeter today. Okay, so what we can do is just, so we have the 4 bolts, 1, 2, 3, 4, removed from the fuel rail. Okay, and so this, as well as the fuel injectors, should be pretty loose, and they're pretty much held in at this point, at least the fuel injectors, from clamps that are back here, as well as simply just rubber seal that's actually going into the cylinder. Okay. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to gently pop these clips off of the fuel injectors. So we have all the clips off as well. Okay, so now the fuel rail should be able to be removed from the fuel injectors. And there is going to be a little bit of residual fuel in here, and there might be a little bit of pressure. And so if you wanted to release that, you can take the cap off of the Schrader valve, push down on it, release some of the pressure. Okay, this hadn't been started in a long time, so I figured there probably wouldn't be too much pressure inside here. Okay, I'm going to pop these guys out, and now what I'm doing is I'm just kind of gently wiggling these dudes out. Some of them will want to come out a little bit easier than others. And the number 6 is the one that we have to be concerned with the most, because this is the one that's basically not really working. And our new fuel injectors look like this. This test I'm going to show you only tells you if the fuel injector, the solenoid in it, is still okay. It's not going to tell you if it's clean or not, because you can still end up having clogged jets and stuff like that. So this one right here is a new fuel injector. And how we're going to test this is we're going to be looking for resistance. So you have to have some type of multimeter here. And what we're going to do is we're going to switch over to ohms, because that is the measurement for resistance. And you're going to see that there's 2 leads in this guy. And what we're going to do is we're going to put the black lead on one side, and then we're going to put the red lead on the other side. And we should see somewhere between 14.5 and maybe like 15.5, I think, for this particular one. So 14.7, that's fine. Now what that tells us is that inside here there is a what's known as a magnet wire, and it's wrapped around many times, and it creates an electromagnet. Okay, so it's basically a solenoid, and that's telling us that it's 14.7 ohms. Okay, so if it was 0, that would be bad. If it was something along the lines of maybe like 28, 29, 30, right, that's way too high. So you'd end up having another problem, and that could happen when you end up having a really poor connection, or part of the wire had burned up and it had become thinner. There's all sorts of things that can happen, but the important thing is we're getting a number 14.7. Now when you end up testing your fuel injectors, what you can do is take one that you know is good, get a measurement off of it, and use that as your base, as your baseline, as your standard. Okay, so this one is new. We know that one's good. We have another one here. I think this is another new one. Okay, we're going to test this guy. 14.7, so we know that that one's good. Now remember, what we're testing here only tests the coil. Okay, it's not testing whether it's clogged or not. Okay, you're going to see that on these there are rubber grommets. Okay, one across the top, one across the bottom. We have to make sure that those are good. If you find that's one that's missing, look for it up inside here, look for it down here, but you shouldn't have any of those rubber grommets missing. We've tested all of those, and so we know that they're good. Now the question is this gummed up in any way? Is it clogged? Okay. So fuel injectors are fairly inexpensive, you know, but if you suspect that one of them is dirty, you can hit it with some carburetor cleaner or something. You can also end up using fuel injector cleaner. You can just buy a new fuel injector. There's actually ways that you can clean it, and I might show you another video on how to test it and how to clean it and everything. It's a little contraption you can make. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to end up testing these guys, and I'm going to do it in a very strange way that most people would say, oh my God, you shouldn't do it like that. I'm old school mechanic. I don't necessarily follow rules, I just do what I know works. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to take each one of these guys, hit it with a cleaner and lubricant, so that way it'll slide up in this real easy right there. Okay, and we can turn this around because that is the direction it's supposed to be. We can take our clip and put it back on. There you go. Make sure that those go all the way in. Now with that being done, as long as all of these have been locked into place and are well seated, if I turn the key on, we should not see any leakage out of this, no gas leakage. So let me turn the power on. Okay, so right now the power is on. In other words, the key is on, but the engine is not turned on. And right now I'm looking for drips. I'm looking for a leaky fuel injector. I'm not seeing any. Okay, obviously if you ended up seeing something spray out or it's dripping, you need to clean it or you need to replace it. But this is one way that I can make sure I don't have any leaky fuel injectors. Okay, now how do we go about testing to see if this is actually something that is dirty? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a mason jar, or just something that can hold on to the gas. And on one of the leads, I will put an alligator clip, and then on another lead, I will put an alligator clip. Okay. Okay, so the fuel pump should be on. So what I've got here now is just a regular 9-volt battery, and this one I'm just going to end up hitting, and we can see it spray. Okay, and that tells me that that one is not dirty. Okay, so we can pick this guy up. We don't see any drips or leakage. Okay, and once again, it's really important that you end up doing this test with the battery away from the fuel injector. I'm doing it back here. If I'm trying to tap it here, it could create a spark and it could ignite, and I don't want that. Okay, that one's good. Okay, so now that we've done that, we know that the fuel injectors all work. Okay, we know that they are not clogged. We also know that all of them are functioning. Okay, we also know that we have a positive fuel pressure that's coming here too, because if your fuel pump is bad, that could create a problem as well, right? Or if the filter is just overly clogged. And a good sign of a clogged filter is if you are driving and idle is fine, low miles is fine, but as soon as you start accelerating, all of a sudden it just seems like it's wanting to die out on you. It could be because there's not enough fuel being able to actually get pumped in there because the filter is constricting that fuel. And that's a really good sign that it could just be a clogged fuel filter. Okay. So, and at this point we can go ahead and reinstall the fuel rail. And to reinstall it, we just end up reversing basically what we had originally done. But I'm going to end up spraying a little bit of lubricant on and just kind of give it a wiggle. All right, so at least now we know the problem cannot be fuel pressure, the problem cannot be a clogged fuel injector, okay, and the problem cannot be a damaged or broken fuel injector. So far we're doing pretty good, okay? But now we got to deal with another situation, and that's going to end up being power.